None. You're causing static. Are we ready? Okay. Okay, it is now 7:02 and I am reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, May 16th, 2022. Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Miss Deming,
Present.
Miss Jane,
Here.
Miss Rising,
Here.
Miss Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Carubas,
Here.
Miss Grover,
Here.
and that's it.
We have a quorum. Ms. Grover, will you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next special board meeting will be held Monday, June 4th. We have several board salutes, so we will start with Ms. Jane.
The National Merit Scholarship Corporation announced 7 District 204 high school seniors were named National Merit Scholars in this year's competition. District 204's National Merit Scholars are Divij Garg from Mattia Valley High School, Ashka Dayal, Sanjay Ganesh, Kelly Hong, Sophie Ming, James Rosenberger from Neuqua Valley High School, and Joshua Chi from Wabanzi Valley High School. These scholars were chosen from more than 15,000 finalists as having the strongest combination of accomplishments, skills, and potential for success in rigorous college studies. Each will receive $2,500 scholarship. Congratulations to each of you on your achievement.
Do you have a second one?
No.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kurbis, you're next.
Chicago Sun-Times Art Contest winner. The board salutes Wabanzi Valley sophomore Mehak Chandran for being selected as one of Chicago Sun-Times Art Contest winners. Students were asked to submit an artistic take on the theme Spring Ahead. There were over 120 entries from the Chicagoland area and 10 winners from elementary school, middle school, and high school. Congratulations, Mehak. I do have another one. Indian Prairie Classified Association scholarships awarded. The board salutes the 4 District 204 students who were honored by the Indian Prairie Classified Association with scholarships. The Indian Prairie Classified Association awarded scholarships to William Carter Burgoon, Swathi Sanil, and Aditya Ter from Neuqua Valley, and Evan Thilk from Wabanzi Valley. We appreciate the Indian Prairie Classified Association for supporting our students through their scholarship program. Congratulations to all the scholarship recipients.
Mr. Rising.
Mattia Valley teacher honored as valuable educator. The board salutes Mattia Valley teacher Sidney Newkirch on becoming the May 2022 honoree of Honored, a nonprofit organization dedicated to keeping great teachers in the classroom and to inspiring a new generation of talent to pursue teaching. Mrs. Newkirch was nominated by Mattia Valley student Gabby Zarnick. Gabby's nomination letter detailed the 16 ways which Miss Sidney Newkirch has proven to be valuable educator for disabled students. Nominations are only accepted from students. In addition to public recognition, each honoree receives a $5,000 reward and are empowered to help other teachers with a $1,000 gift card to donorschoose.org. Congratulations to Mrs. Newkirch on this notable achievement, and to Gabby, her student nominee.
Ms. Fosdick.
Wabanzi Valley Wind Ensemble invited to Super State Concert Band Festival. The board salutes the Wabanzi Valley High School Wind Ensemble on their outstanding performance at the University of Illinois Super State Concert Band Festival. The festival invites only the finest wind band programs in the state of Illinois based on competitive audition. Every band invited is a winner and represents the very finest the state has to offer. Congratulations to the Wabanzi Valley High School Wind Ensemble on this prestigious accomplishment.
Do you have a second?
I do. District 204 students received national awards in Reflections Art Program. The board salutes Diara Geary of Kendall Elementary and Eden Salem of Hill Middle School for winning the Reflections National Award of Excellence. Diara and Eden are 2 out of 5 students from Illinois and 288 entries that advanced to the national competition who achieved national recognition. Congratulations to Diara and Eden on achieving this well-deserved award.
Ms. Grover.
Wabanzi Valley Senior achieves rank of Eagle Scout. The board salutes Wabanzi Valley Senior Sohail Londe for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest advancement rank in scouting. Eagle Scout service projects give scouts the opportunity to plan, develop, and show leadership and initiative. Sohail's project involved leading a team of individuals who constructed a goat play structure at the Phillips Park Zoo in Aurora. The project is a great addition to the zoo and benefits the animals and our community. Congratulations to Sohail on achieving the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout. I have a second.
Thank you for all of those
I have
board
a second.
salutes.
I have a
Oh, you do? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Hold the applause.
Mattia Valley wins Crystal Pillar Award. The board salutes Mattia Valley's The Maine for winning the Crystal Pillar Award for the Chicago Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences in the magazine program category. The Crystal Pillar is the highest student production award given to the high school students. This is the Maine's second win in 3 years. Congratulations to teacher Nick Grijalva and student entrants Aloran Lane, Roshni Ashrit, Ani Aprisian, and Zara Salim on winning the Crystal Pillar.
All right, now we have an applause. Thank you for Next up is our student representative report from Kastubi Kanapali from Mattia Valley High School.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kaustubh Kanapali, and I am the class of 2025 Executive Board Representative here for Mattia Valley, and I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight. Some general information. Prom went amazing. Over 600 students attended and had an amazing evening while enjoying food and great music. Black and Gold Senior Awards were presented to the students who have been working hard since day one of their freshman year till now. These seniors will once again be acknowledged during graduation on May 29th at NIU at 2 p.m. Congratulations once again to all the seniors that have worked so hard these last 4 years. To add on to the senior festivities, senior road trip took place this past weekend. Students were at Mattia from 7 p.m. till midnight. These activities included food trucks, bag tournaments, raffles, and a hypnotist, and much more. Seniors had a great time and were able to make some long-lasting memories that I'm sure they will remember for the rest of their lives. AP testing has gone extremely well with a vast number of tests being taken, as well as a large population of students taking tests. Faculty and staff were celebrated during the first week of May with treats, gift cards, and a food truck. With fine arts, the music department has been extremely busy with performances that students have been working on since the beginning of this year. Their work, as well as the art department's work, will be showcased at the Fine Arts Festival on May 21st, as well as other works of districts from the art, as well as other works of art from the district, With athletics, the entire badminton team has qualified for state after dominating sectionals. The girls' soccer team is currently ranked second in state after winning against all teams in the DVC. The tennis team has been putting in the work and gave other conference teams the pass this weekend. Keep up the great work, Mustangs. Baseball has had an amazing season and has DVC tournaments this week. Boys volleyball has been undefeated and is expected to win more tournaments this season. Both boys and girls lacrosse seasons have been phenomenal and are expected to make it to state playoffs later this week. Athletes of the Year have been named to Sydney Lewis in bowling and Jalen Johnson in football and in track. Keep up the great work. There has definitely been achievements that have been missed, but they have not been missed in our trophy case. Come stop by and see all of the hardware our Mustangs have won this year. That's all I have for the May board report. Thanks, everybody. Saad will be here to see you in the fall. And as always, go Mustangs. Thank you.
Okay, it's now time for public comment. 60 minutes is allowed for public comment, and each person is limited to 3 minutes. When addressing the board, we ask that you respect the confidentiality and the safety of our students and school district personnel. We also ask that those addressing the board be cognizant that this is an open meeting and is available to all age groups, and as such, ask that you consider who the audience members are this evening and keep comments age appropriate. Public comment represents the voice and opinion of the speaker. There will be no feedback from the board members during the meeting, but follow-up will be provided by an administrator as appropriate. We have 2 speakers tonight. The first speaker is Carrie Klum. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Clem, and I have 3 children in 204, a senior at Wabanzi and a 6th and 8th grader at Fisher Middle School. I am thrilled with the education my children have received here, and I am a loud fan of this district. I'm here tonight to communicate my concerns over the behavioral issues among students at Fisher Middle School this school year. I want to make it very clear that I do not blame our amazing staff or our amazing administration at Fisher for this unusual situation. In fact, I think that they are more frustrated than the parents are. They're living this every day, and I'm just grateful that they haven't run off screaming by now. They are truly wonderful. I can't say enough good things. This school year at Fisher has followed the national trend we are seeing among middle schoolers of increased disrespect towards adults, sexual harassment, threats, and violence among the students. I am appalled at the highly uncomfortable and age-inappropriate discussions I have had to have with my children over things like sexual harassment among their peers, the blatant and consistent viewing of Pornhub on the phones of some students throughout the day, the unusual rate of violence and fights, and the unbelievable language around them all day long. I'm not here blaming the school for the behavior of these students. In fact, middle schoolers are way old enough to make their own choices and suffer those consequences. But I am very concerned that there do not appear to be many consequences. In-school suspension or removal of privileges seem to be about it, and they just don't appear to be an effective deterrent. These kids are so smart, and they have figured out this post-COVID lighter consequence system, and they are gaming all of us and running circles around us. While I recognize and empathize that the children exhibiting this behavior are in some kind of crisis mindset, I just do not understand why kids who scrawl school-wide threats on bathroom walls, brawl violently in the middle of instruction time during class, make sexual noises in the halls while they spray female students with water bottles, and expose themselves to their classmates during instructional time, are allowed to remain in our school, let alone let back into the very same classrooms among the very students they have made feel unsafe. It's almost like, in a very well-intentioned attempt to show kindness to the struggling kids acting out after the trauma of the last 2 years, we have completely ignored the trauma that they are actually causing to the kids who are not participating in this behavior. Many of whom, by the way, are also processing their own trauma from the last 2 years and are hindered in their healing by feeling unsafe at school, the one place that was supposed to offer them consistency and a return to some kind of normalcy. It's May, this isn't going to be fixed this school year, but I just wanted to make sure that the proper financial and staffing support is being put in place to address the high number of kids in crisis in this age group. I am begging to see crisis counselors inside our schools next school year, and I am praying that you guys are taking a look at the current district discipline policy. I worry greatly that we will lose many of our high-quality educators over this.
Ms. Donahue, the speaker's time is up.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Anna Salazarna.
Hi, my name is Anna Solorzano. I'm the mother of a daughter who is a second grade developmental bilingual student at Georgetown Elementary. I'd like for you to consider the boundary change for my daughter, which greatly impacts my daughter and other students in this program. She's been in the developmental bilingual program with the same students since kindergarten. This DVD program is exclusive only to Georgetown Elementary and not offered anywhere else in this district. This program is not the same as an ESL program. Even with the current changes, my daughter will still have 50-50 instruction in both Spanish and English. When I signed up to this program, I was promised my daughter will be able to continue to learn both languages up to high school. And because of this boundary change, you are now removing her from a program not available anywhere else. As a minority mother, I feel very disappointed at how this school district has handled this boundary change. No one has been able to help me with this matter or taken into consideration the Spanish-speaking students in this program. Do you know how much my daughter will be affected by not continuing with this bilingual program? You are taking away from her the opportunity to reach her highest potential. This is what you preach, correct? You want the best for each student, and you want them to reach their highest potential. She is learning how to write and read in 2 languages. Because of this program, my daughter will be able to live fully bilaterate from this district. This district prides on diversity and equity. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial, but I feel this district forgot the true meaning of equity. Equity doesn't mean equal, but rather providing students what they need to reach their fullest potential. Why is it that we are trying to remove students from this program exclusive to Georgetown? You wouldn't allow services to discontinue on the south side of the district, right? Why are you doing it to the north side of the district? Is it because the most affected ones are Spanish-speaking people who never question your authority? I'm a minority mother who works and pays the same taxes like someone who owns a $1 million home in this district. My daughter should have the same rights. However, my rights and my daughter's rights are being taken away because we are a minority. As a minority parent of this district, I feel you're being very dismissive of my daughter's educational needs. As I said before, my daughter will be able to live fully bilateral from Georgetown and will provide more opportunities for her future educational career. I ask you for the same rights for my daughter. If you really want the best for each student, please let my daughter and the other 3 students stay at Georgetown. Please put into action what you preach. I ask you to please not take away from her the opportunity to be 100% bilingual. Every student is important regardless of her language and status, correct? You made a commitment to us when we agreed to follow this back. You should honor your commitment. I would like for a member of the board to get back to me with regards to my questions, as you are the ones who made the decision
Ms.
on the
Donahue,
boundaries.
the speaker's time is up.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move to our consent agenda and superintendent report. We will start with the superintendent report. Dr. Talley.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue, members of the board, and the Indian Prairie community. May has been designated as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Our schools have been involved in sharing and celebrating the contributions that Asian American and Pacific Islanders have provided to our country and our world and are instrumental in our future success. On Thursday night at Neuqua Valley High School Freshman Center, there will be a parent academy entitled Becoming a High School Parent. The event is to help parents who have their first ninth grade student understand the ins and outs of high school life. Though all of us have gone through high school, at some point in our time, the high school experience has changed. This will be a great way for parents to understand what the next 4 years may be like for their child and for themselves as parents. The event starts at 7 p.m. As this is the last Board of Education meeting before the end of the school year, I would like to say some words to all of our staff who are retiring at the end of this school year. I want to first thank you for your years of service to Indian Prairie School District. You have demonstrated a commitment to the students and to your peers throughout the years, and that commitment, that dedication, is very much appreciated and celebrated. Second, I want to congratulate each one of you on your decision you have made. The decision to retire is a very personal one. I have been told you will know when it's time to make it. For you, you have made that decision. I know that you are now taking the time to put yourself first and to do some other things that have been put on the back burner. And I finally want to say that though you may not be part of the daily life here at Indian Prairie, you will always be part of the Indian Prairie family. You are interwoven into the fabric that is Indian Prairie. Each successful student is due to what you have done over the years. The success of the school system was only possible because of you. Thank you for all that you have done, and I wish you all the best. And now, before I turn the meeting to Ms. Donahue, I will ask the Board of Ed to approve two appointments tonight. First, I ask that you approve the hiring of Mr. Darius Hightower as the new principal of Longwood Elementary School. He is replacing Ms. Tracy Ratner, who is leaving the system. Mr. Hightower, who is sitting in the audience with his wife, is coming to us from Danville Community Consolidated School District 118, where he is currently serving as an assistant principal. Mr. Hightower is an experienced educator who has served as a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teacher before becoming an assistant principal. He also served as acting principal of a school for a period of time. Mr. Hightower is excited about joining Indian Prairie and more specifically the Longwood community. And second, I would also ask that the Board of Ed to approve Mr. Brian Grimstad for the position of Director of Technology Support Services. He is also in our audience. He is currently our coordinator of support services, and this new job change brings it with additional administrative responsibilities. Mr. Grinstad has been a steady, positive influence within our IT structure and a great support to our schools and staff. He was probably one of the first people I met when I came on board a little more than almost 2 years ago. So I just hope that you all will approve that, and I'll now turn this over to Ms. Donahue.
Thank you. First, I want to add our appreciation from the board to all of the staff that is retiring. Our district is what the success we are because of your contributions. We wish you success and health and happiness in your new activities. So with that, I need a motion to approve Darius Hightower as principal of Longwood Elementary School as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve Darius Hightower as principal of Longwood Elementary School as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Mr. Carubus,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Ms. Jane,
Yes.
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
and Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. And now I need a motion to approve Brian Grinstad as Director of Technology Support Services as presented.
Move that the Board of Education approve Brian Grinstad as Director of Technology Support Services as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Jane,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Carubus,
Yes.
and Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
The motion passes. Congratulations. All right, so next up is our Outstanding Service Award for Student Representatives.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue, members of the board and the Indian Prairie community. I would like tonight to celebrate 3 of our students for the outstanding work they've done this year as high school student representatives. Each month, we have heard from our student representatives as they have shared information about their high schools, the work their fellow students have been doing, and the successes earned by the students. These students, who have a full academic and social load, have come prepared and ready to represent their schools, their students, and their communities. In each of their reports, one could see and feel their enthusiasm for their school and the events happening. 2 of our representatives are seniors and will be moving on at the end of the year, and 1 is a junior. So tonight I want to salute the 3 representatives and give them a token of appreciation to all 3 of them. I would like now to call to the stage 2 of our representatives. First is Ms. Lisa Ntochi, is a senior at Neuqua Valley and will be attending the University of Washington in the fall. Is Lisa here? And then Nithya Mulapudi is a senior at Wabanzi High School and will attend Indiana University next year. Mr. Saad Qureshi is a junior at Natia High School and will be with us next year. I gave him his award last week, but he could not be here tonight.
Mr. Stipp, you want to join in the?
Please. She made us look so good this year.
You want the whole board up there for a picture?
We did
Yeah.
last year, but
Let's do the whole board.
Are we doing it?
Okay.
All right. Next, we move to our consent agenda items. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items F through O.
I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda items F through O as presented.
I think we should amend that motion to be G through O.
That's right. G through O.
Q through O?
G.
G through O. Okay. Are you amending your
I
motion?
amend the motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second your amended motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick,
Yes.
Ms. Jane,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
and Ms. Deming.
Aye.
The motion passes. Next, we move to our action items. I need a motion and a second to approve the 2022-2026 Indian Prairie Classified Association Agreement as presented.
This is Allison Fosdick. I move that the Board of Education approve the 2022-2023 administrative contracts and salaries as presented. Is that correct?
2022, 2026.
Through 2026, sorry.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Fosdick,
Yes.
Ms. Jane, Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
and Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Motion passes. Very happy.
I'd like to have Ms. Lisa Ramos to come to the table so we can do a signature.
It's reading up here.
was another significant accomplishment for the district, and I thank everyone that was involved, or the board thanks everyone that was involved in the negotiations and the determination of that contract, so thank you. All right, next, I need a motion and a second to approve to uphold the school's graduation ceremony decision as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve the action regarding a student disciplinary matter as presented in executive session.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Carubus,
Yes.
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Jane,
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick, Ms. Donahue,
Yes,
Ms. Grover, and Ms. Demme.
Aye.
the motion passes. Okay, we will now have a presentation from Doug Gacarius regarding grants.
Good evening, Dr. Talley and Board of Education. We are excited to present this evening about grants and other opportunities that we've done to support additional programming throughout the district. I'm joined this evening by Dr. Tara Bell, who's I would consider an expert on grants. She's done a lot of phenomenal work. She knows the grant process in and well, and kind of conducts us through the process, but also works quite hard at making sure it's just right before we submit these grants. Also, Candy Michelli, who's our Director of Professional Learning, and before we had hired the mental health coordinator, mental health and wellness coordinator, a lot of the SEL programming and wellness programming fell onto Candy's shoulders, and she worked a lot with our SEL committees. And now she's done a lot of work on these grants, along with Dawn Faulkner, as well as with Dr. Bell. And then I'm also supported here by Brian Giovannini to talk about he oversees, he's our Director of Innovation, oversees CTE, which kind of ties to this Education Pathways grant. He worked quite a bit with Dr. Lee on that as well, on getting that in. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we talk about the Grow Your Own program. It's not just the 4 people up here. A lot of people put in a lot of work, a lot of passion, a lot of hours in trying to support students, but also in preparing for these grants. The district, you'll notice on this one, we're going to talk about at least 3 competitive grants that we've received, as well as 2 more that we've applied for. And there's a lot of work. You take a big gamble. On one of the most recent ones, I think we had 33 pages of work. We had to tie in principals from at least 7 buildings. We probably spent many hours, and we don't know if we're going to get it. But we get excited about it, and sometimes we find other ways to make it happen if it doesn't go through, but we've had a lot of luck lately. So with that, you're going to hear us talk about 3 different grants this evening. One are the competitive grants that we've received. The other is a federal grant updates just on our Esser grants or CARES grants. That's the COVID-related funding for school. Our Title I grant, which unfortunately we have some difficult news on that one. And then we want to talk a little bit about the recent competitive grant applications. We have no idea when we might hear if we get approved for those. But we do want to make sure that the board's aware of the work we put in for that and the potential for the district for those grants as well. So some of the grants that we've applied for, the competitive grants, or that we've been approved for, one is called Peace of Mind. We like to use those acronyms. So PEACE standing for Parent Education and Community Engagement. That one focuses on mental health, social emotional learning, and wellness. We have our Club Hub, which has been for our 21st Century Grant. And then we have your Grow Your Own Teachers, which is that CTE Pathway grant. So kick it off. We're going to start with Dr. Tarbell.
Thank you, Mr. Acarius. And before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge, although I appreciate the compliment that Mr. Acarius paid, I had some excellent mentorship from Kathy Pease and Laura Devine Johnston prior to their retirement to ensure that there was good institutional knowledge about all of our grants prior to their retirement. So that brings us to the 21st Century Grant. The purpose of this grant, it's federally funded that flows through the state, is to support schools with a high percentage of low-income students, provide them with academic enrichment, literacy support after school. We are actively engaging families of participating students as well. With 21st Century, the priority is not just on students, but also on providing services to families. Total grant award is $1.5 million over 5 years. We are currently in our second year. We started last year during remote and then continued on this year to in-person. Currently, we have 260 students that are engaged at Georgetown and Longwood. K-5 students, legislation does require 40% free reduced lunch or low income on the school report card. That's why we only have 2 school buildings in our district. They are the only 2 that qualify currently. We are currently paying, again with grant funds, 40 staff. We're encouraging them to become teacher leaders within the program, and the local organization is coordinated by site coordinators that have stepped up from those 2 buildings. We also are offering 12 hours of hands-on family evening Zoom clubs, which you'll learn more about in our video. Strategies for this grant, currently in our second year, offering a variety of programming to appeal to student interests. So we have everything from STEM club to math club to art club to a morning kindergarten club. So just an awful amount of variety of, lots of variety to appeal to student interest. We are working 30 weeks out of the school year, so it's a long commitment for students and staff with some great results. We provide 5 weeks of summer programming as well. We're working with National Inventors Hall of Fame again this year to provide Camp Invention free of charge to all families, and we'll be again planning a family field trip. Last year our family field trip had absolutely everyone from the entire program sign up to go. Unfortunately, that was the day there was a tornado, so we had to cancel. But it was great to see that all families wanted to participate. We did have an opportunity to create a video about our family Zoom clubs that we're doing, and we wanted to share that with you tonight. Do we have to go this?
We have a box where we have different Legos in it. We have a Lego box which you get to keep. You can build stuff that way we build in real life, but you can see it built here in Lego Club.
So Build Club is a part of the Club Hub program, so the after school program, and the Build Club is virtual. One of the criteria was they wanted parents to be involved, so I signed her up knowing that she loved Legos.
The funding is a grant that was written by the Indian Prairie District 204, and it is funded through the state of Illinois through what is called now Club Hub. We have the 2 schools were chosen due to the Title I school, so they could get some extra enriching activities.
I've been involved with playing with Legos since I was 5 or 6 years old, and this has been a really fun way to do it, something that we can work on together. He builds and pull the pieces out, and it lets everything work more efficiently, so he's the one doing the real learning.
We talk about science, like whatever science topic, because we're talking about force always when you're putting things together and taking it apart, but we're also building with ramps and pulleys. We've done a wind activity, so we bring in a science component with a book, and then we get into this kit that the Lego company has created for schools.
The favorite part for me is just watching Audrey grow with her ability to be able to go from maybe the simple builds and to move up to the more complex builds.
Legos
You did,
are
I know.
my more days of it. They do a little demonstration to their family or to us. They're using that language, realizing that they're actually learning higher level scientific skills, and then they can use that in their everyday schoolwork, and they're feeling successful.
So that was one of the examples of the offerings that we created this year. Our plan is to have one family engagement club, essentially each quarter. In each club is about 12 hours total of family engagement throughout that quarter. So it's a significant number of hours throughout the course of the year. Sure.
All right, next, Brian's going to go ahead and talk about our CTE grant.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of not only the C&I team but the HR department. This is a collaborative effort between those two departments to really support our pathway initiatives as well as to provide some excitement around the careers education, from classroom teacher to social work to administration, all the things that make our schools run, including the business and financial office, to really support what's happening in our buildings. As I mentioned, the HR department has been really huge and collaborative in this work and has done a lot of work in supporting our educators at the middle school and high school level to provide some experiences that will allow our students to get excited and see the possibilities that are available to them as they enter their high school coursework, as well as beyond that to hopefully eventually come back and be educators in our district. So I'll talk a little bit now about some of the things that are happening behind the scenes to support this and what we've done with this grant. Doug, you can go to the next slide. The first thing at the elementary school level, we really looked at this at a K-12 opportunity to really excite students about opportunities, and we start that in the elementary school level, and that's some of the things that we do with our World of Work, and we really wanted to highlight the education careers within that work. So two things that we did this year was, one, we did a World of Work week, and we highlighted some careers education. We brought our graduates of 204, some of the students who have graduated from here are now educators in our district, and shared about their experience, about their journey, which our elementary school students really loved because they got to see some of their classroom teachers, some of the people that they have seen along their journey, and kind of told their story. The second thing we did an activity to really highlight education, get them hands-on, having some fun, and really get excited about that career. The second thing that we've done through this grant is our middle school. Miss Carrie has done some work with our clubs at the middle school level called Teachers of Tomorrow to give them some experience of what's possible. So through each one of these club meetings, they've had an opportunity to learn about different parts of education, what happens, what are some things that they do, and some of the things that they would encounter in that career. And then also some team building activities, and really just start to see what it'd be like to be an educator. And then our high school level, Dr. Lee has worked really close with our Grow Your Own coordinators. We're going to show you a video here in a second to highlight this, but what these clubs did, they had an opportunity to go to each level, as well as one level of interest to them to really see what's possible and see what they really like. And during these visits, they had an opportunity to be a part of the classroom. And you'll see in this video, you'll see the excitement they got to have when they had an opportunity to interact with the class and really act like that teacher, even in a short window, to see that experience highlighted. So we'll show that video now.
Teachers are like the people that can inspire students to understand why they want to learn and then really can navigate their passion. And I kind of want to be involved in that process and really inspire students to find out what they're passionate about.
The Grow Your Own Teacher program is an opportunity for our students to learn and experience what it is like to be an educator. Our ultimate goal is to inspire our students to return and become educators right here in District 204. We want students to feel a part, so they'll have ID badges, shadow teachers in the classroom, and potentially help to support a lesson that's being taught.
This is a very unique opportunity that 204 is doing to really build the momentum into the next generation of teachers.
I had a really great time at the middle school observation, probably going to be my favorite because I'm leaning more towards the middle school level. And it was just so cool to just kind of be in a teacher's position for a day, go to their meetings and stuff like that. It was a really cool experience.
They were surprised with all the back and forth and all the different people we talked to. And I liked that they were able to see something besides honestly reinforces like the idea of teaching, because watching it is one thing, but actually getting to experience it is completely different.
It was always one of my favorite days when those events were happening, even if, as Dr. Lee would mention that this is going to happen, but you'll see on Twitter not only excitement from students, but the educators and the excitement that they had after interacting with our future educators and the excitement that came with that. I know Candy and I have talked about that a couple of times of how great and the momentum behind it. So there's some other things that highlight this work podcast. Candy and I had an opportunity to interview Dr. Lee and Miss Carey about what the Grow Your Own program is, as well as we had an opportunity to interview one of the Grow Your Own teacher coordinators from Waubonsie and a student to share about that experience. And the communications team has put on that video as well as another video to highlight this work. Some two other quick things that have happened behind the scenes with this grant to help with some of our pathway work. We've been working really closely with our directors of guidance and our school counselors to really help kind of initiate the pathway ideas, and this really helped jumpstart this work. And we have our educator pathway for elementary and secondary built out, where ultimately students can put some endorsements on their transcript if they go through that process. So that'll kind of help us in some other areas as well as we go through this journey.
Thank you, Brian. And up next we have Candy to talk about our community partnership grant, Peace of Mind.
Good evening. It's nice to be here with all of you to share some exciting news about our, we were awarded this grant through Illinois State Board of Education. And as you know, we've shared in the past all the work that we have done with social emotional learning across all our levels. And with this grant, we are excited to share that we are going to be able to expand some of the support using our already established partnerships with our community, but also hopefully create new relationships so that we have the support for not just our students, but also our educators and our families. So with this grant, the purpose really is to help us provide an opportunity for perhaps some of the negative impacts of COVID, but we're also looking ahead for more of those comprehensive systems where it's not just having the social emotional learning lessons that are provided throughout the day, but it's something that we can expand into homes, with our teachers throughout the day through professional learning and activities either before or after school or even during the day. You can see underneath where the Fiscal award is indicated. It is for 2 years for a total of $635,000. And the majority of that money is going to be given back directly to the buildings, so they have some autonomy to address some of the needs they have specifically for the building based on a number of requirements outlined in the grant. We're having a resource fair on Wednesday where about a month ago we invited over 50 organizations that joined a breakfast with several of our teacher leaders and building administrators and did a portion of this presentation for them to let them know the needs that we were having in our buildings related to social emotional learning and mental health. And we were so pleased to see the excitement that the community had to wanting to be in our buildings and work with our families, our students, and our teachers. So on Wednesday, we're inviting all of those partnerships back into to Mattia from 3 to 6, and we have identified social emotional learning ambassadors at every level that will be awarded an honorarium for some of this work, but they'll be putting together activities based on the funding we give them for students, staff, and then as well as families, so that we would see some of that parent engagement piece as well. And they'll be able to walk around and talk with each of these organizations to see what might fit best for their buildings. And so we'll be looking to do that over the course of 2 years. As you know, we have amazing relationships already established with a lot of our community partnerships, and so some buildings may choose to expand upon what they already have developed, or after Wednesday or beyond, they might learn that there's something else that is a need that they didn't even know there was someone in the community that can support their building, and so they would have an opportunity to network and address some of the needs that they have. Thank you. Just to give an idea, because there's so many ideas that I'm sure we haven't even figured out the layers to areas that we can support individual groups. But some of the ideas would be that student or staff might identify bringing in therapy dogs, an after-school expressive arts program, expanding what we already have in our parent education opportunities. They may be specific to a building. Buildings may pool all their funds together and do something as a feeder school or by community, north, south, east, west, however they see that those needs might be met. And then an example for our staff, we might have some established mental health activities or things like yoga or mindfulness. You can see to the right, that is just some pictures of our breakfast. I don't have fabulous video yet, but now that I know that's a criteria, we'll have one next year. But we will, and over the course of the year with our SEL ambassadors, we'll be meeting with them, mostly so they can collaborate with each other. So if they find out someone is doing some fabulous program in their building and they feel that that's something that they can address, they can work together, support one another, and certainly reach out to everyone that's already been a great assistance to making this all happen. We're excited.
All right, thanks, Candy. And that's a brand new grant, thus no video. Here's Dr. Bell, and she's going to talk about our homeless children and youth grant.
So the district has a robust program for supporting families that are McKinney-Vento eligible, led by Sandy Diaz, our homeless liaison, and Assistant Superintendent Brad Hillman, as well as Ron Johnson for transportation. This grant provided an opportunity to provide additional resources beyond what normally is provided through the McKinney-Vento program, funded through the ROE. So essentially what we did was talk with families and asked what are some services that students are needing post-pandemic, and the families informed Sandy and Assistant Superintendent Hillman that having access to additional tutoring, additional resources at home, books, materials, and then also just some additional support at two of our Title I buildings would be helpful. So since then, all 260 students, early childhood all the way through 12th grade, will be receiving additional books this summer, received additional books from Scholastic, large book packs, 10 to 30 books additional, at various points throughout the school year. So during the Winter Wishes fair that Sandy coordinates, there were additional books handed out to students and families. Again, additional books this summer, beyond what Mr. Carius will talk about momentarily with Esser, and already started thinking about back to school book purchases for those students as they head back to classes in August. One of the highlights, we are able to offer McKinney-Vento eligible students year-long tutoring 2 days a week at Georgetown and Longwood as part of the after-school program for 21st Century, established through a partnership with actually one of our retirees, Dr. Natalie Johnson from Mattia, founded actually in her retirement a consulting company dedicated to closing the achievement gap. So she's been having some great success with some struggling learners at our two title buildings.
Great, thank you, Dr. Bell. Next, we're just going to do a few brief updates about some federal grants that we have quite a bit of funds coming in with. First is our Esser Grant. As you know, I did a presentation about our Esser funds just a little while back. Just wanted to, we are finishing up Esser 2 right now. If you recall, CARES 1 was the first original name, and then it turned into Esser, which is the emergency funds, Esser 2. We have yet to start any spending on Esser 3. We will bring that to the board when we have that budget lined up. We'll also, we're required to do a hearing on that before we get to Esser 3. We did plan on trying to get through Esser 2 to carry us through this year so that we can start next year with Esser 3 funding. And that's the largest of all funding, and we hope that gets us through the last 2 years and maybe a little bit more than that. Its purpose is to support local school districts with pandemic relief funds. Funding to address learning loss, 20% minimum is required. Esser 2 consisted of $3,778,723. We did a lot, as you recall, of reducing class sizes. It impacts all students in schools across our district. Every level added different kinds of positions to support them as we were returning all of our students for in-person learning. It was also still providing some students with distance learning opportunities, ones who might have been too, compromise to come in person during this time. We're also providing additional resources for skill building, hiring additional teachers, as I said, as well as additional nursing services throughout. Additionally, we're providing all early childhood through 5th grade students with summer tote and reading math resources paired with online support. So we'll pass these around so you can look at them. The students, the principals are very excited for the students to be able to take these home with them to keep. Last year, you might remember that last year we sent books home, and we've got a great response back from that. This year, knowing that we had an opportunity to also provide math support at the same time, so we're providing books as well as math. I know some schools have already started to send those home, and the kids are extremely excited about taking those home, knowing that they are theirs to keep, and so they're very excited about having that opportunity. Perfect rainy day activities throughout the summer. And as well as we're offering early childhood through 12th grade summer enrichment to expand learning time and address learning loss. We're still in the plans. I'll be presenting at the next board meeting just as an update on our summer plans. So far, it looks like we're in pretty good shape for staffing all of our elementary and middle school boost programs, as well as our summer bridge program. We also, right now, have had over, this isn't through Esser funding, but have over 300 students who've signed up for the STEM camp as well, as we wanted to expand on our summer enrichment at the same time. Also wanted to give a little bit of an update on Title I. As you know, the purpose of Title I was to support low-income schools with funding to improve the outcomes for struggling students. Fund salaries, what we mostly do with that is fund salaries to reduce class sizes K through 5. About 5 years ago, we were getting around $1.9 million in Title I funding. And as we've discussed before, each year that's gone lower and lower. This year it's been extremely difficult to try to operate our title schools with the dwindling budget. We've just recently been told that next year our estimated amount is going to be $825,935, which is almost $150,000 less than this year. It has gone down and down and down. We have not, we've tried to sustain without reducing any services at our buildings. We previously had identified 5 Title I schools. We will only be identifying 4 Title I schools for next year. And still the title, it would be difficult to say that what we're doing for those 4 title schools would be fully supported by that $825,000. It's just not the case. So we will be down to 4 Title I schools for next year. Those 4 are Longwood, Georgetown, McCarty, and Gombert. McCarty and Gombert are just below 40%. Longwood and Georgetown are quite a bit above 40%. We had one school that was farther from the rest of the schools, around 30%. And we're going to start to gradually decrease their supports. They won't be officially referred to as a Title I school, but we will still be providing them additional supports in their building to address certain needs. So with that, we are still unsure if the census is, we expect that when the census finally kicks in, that will change what we receive in those funds again. We're hopeful of that. We still do try to make the best with the funds that we receive, and we're appreciative of those funds. So we do have the 4 school-wide. We are legally required to share funds for eligible students attending non-public schools. A question did come in about how many students benefit from the Title I funds. In the past, that would have been 5 full schools. You reduce class sizes, you have additional supports in the building. So that would have been anywhere from probably 2,500 to 2,700 students, I would say. in that range. That's going to reduce to probably 1,800 to 2,000 students with those funds. It was also asked how many students are getting funding from the shared funding, and it's only been about one a year for the last 5 years. It's a very small amount, around between $1,500 and $2,000 to support. They have to be, any families in the private and in non-public schools would have to be low income. They'd have to be struggling academically, and they would have had to, their local school would have had to been one of our title schools. So there's a lot of requirements for any non-public schools to also get a share of that funding. All right, well, we do try to obviously focus on literacy, math, and SEL supports. We do a lot, and you're required to engage families in schools throughout school events and meetings, provide extra support in classrooms by funding SEL coaches to work with students. As you know, we tried to provide additional social emotional learning support in our title schools, and cultivating homeschool connections by funding Title I coordinators to engage the community and the families. So similar to what you've seen with maybe some parent engagement specialists and those types of things, we have other people who make sure they're continuing to reach out to families and to try to support.
And this photo is from April 25th when we had a family art show for Georgetown and Longwood families at Still. We were going to have it here, but 200 people signed up, so we had to move it to Still, which was a great problem to have.
All right, and now we're going to jump into our the recent competitive grants that we have applied for. Saying it loud again, we've applied for, we have not received these. We're very hopeful. There was a lot of work that went into these grants. And so you will see an asterisk on each page that says we've applied, but we have not received. We're very hopeful. Our principals are hopeful. We're excited about the possible opportunities here. So the first one that we're going to talk about, which we've just recently submitted, it was a ton of work, and that one was on the Freedom Schools grant that we're referring to as RISE.
RISE, yes. Reimagining Student Engagement is our district's proposal. Dr. Talley, Mr. Acarius, our assistant superintendents, and 7 principals, as well as several community stakeholders contributed to this. It was a large amount of technical writing, about 35 teeny tiny font pages, which equated to over 80 typed pages. So it was a significant amount of writing with lots of really robust after-school activities for our students, particularly targeting low-income students, students of color, and then creating partnerships with community members to support them over time in an after-school context. The idea of this grant is it's new, so it was put forward by the State Board of Ed, inspired by some legislation, to create a statewide network of after-school grantees engaging in this work around the state. There'll be 45 awards given out, and essentially really creating sort of a connection with between students and schools, the community, and civics education. Essentially, so in terms of the schools that would benefit, so Mr. Acarius, Dr. Talley, and Mr. Sprandl engaged in a several-week process to sort of do like a needs assessment where they pulled just a variety of different data to see what schools would benefit from the target that the state had set for this funding. So we identified Collishaw, Gombart, and McCarty, the elementary grades, Fisher and Granger Middle School, and Hill and Wabansie as well. Then we worked with those principals to identify essentially some activities, after-school activities, initiatives that, if funding was received, would be supported over time. This is a 3-year grant at minimum, just slightly over $1 million. The 3 large sort of buckets that we focused all of the time and energy on were expanded learning time. So of course, providing opportunities outside of the school day, before school, after school, and in the summer. The legislation requires at least a 6-week summer program or program during the school year that provides out-of-state learning opportunities. We wanted the activities to be engaging, so the principals that, consulted with local stakeholders, sort of created the activities with student engagement in mind. And of course, there is again deep community connection, empowering local leaders, and even connecting to some of the work that we discussed earlier that Brian mentioned, utilizing some of our students in the Grow Your Own community to have them be community teachers, essentially, with this program.
Great, and the final grant that we applied for is actually, we don't get to apply for many more private or corporate type of grants, so this one was through Edward Hospital, and this one was about mental health clinics. So, Candy?
Sure. I typically don't like to read all the bullets up there, but the first bullet on the left side under purpose and amount really defines what it would be to create a multifaceted approach to health equity, schools, families, and again, a lot of the same through many things that we shared already tonight, but it's really looking at supporting the needs of our students as it relates to social emotional learning, wellness, and mental health, and their families. And so we requested $1.5 million. We don't know if we'll get that, but if we do, there'll be lots of logistics for us to work out because it's a fabulous idea. But our hope is to be able to support Longwood, Georgetown, and Fisher Middle School. And by doing that, we would be partnering with local community agencies, licensed professionals to come into our schools and provide those mental health services to our students and their families. And then as far as, I just shared a little bit of it, that part of the grant would also be similar to some of the other community partnerships that we could bring in some of those speakers, perhaps like if someone comes in for some services at the end of the day or even on a Saturday, perhaps they can stay for the youth mental health first aid class or a guest speaker or some additional services as well.
And before we take questions, I'd like just to say thank you. We have so many people involved in these grants. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of brainstorming that goes into it as we get excited about trying to apply. We have current staff, we have former staff, we have parents, we have community partners. There are a lot of people that play a role in this process. Our community breakfast, there were so many people interested in supporting school districts and supporting our schools. And just to do whatever's best for kids. Additionally, there's people that do a lot behind the scenes. Dr. Bell does a ton behind the scenes, but also Dawn Monkman, trying to keep track of every dollar we spend on grants, because that's the other thing that comes with it. You have to do expenditure reports all the time and show exactly how you spent every cent. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we're so grateful to so many people across the district who've put a lot of effort into this. And obviously, it's a lot of extra funds that are coming into the district, and we're excited to continue to support students. So with that, we'll take any questions.
How about Ms. Fosdick?
Okay, first let me say thank you so much for all of this work that you do on behalf of our students and their families. I kind of jotted down notes for each section here, so I won't take very long, but for the Club Hub, how do you measure success for that? Is it based on the feedback? It sounds like it's wildly popular and that the kids really enjoy it.
Yes, we actually have an external evaluation. So there's a logic model that takes into consideration parent feedback, community feedback, and then all student feedback, and then also there's a statewide survey that the State Board of Education requires all grantees to do, where it asks behavioral questions, academic improvement questions, and every student that participates, homeroom teacher takes that as well. There's also quarterly, essentially sort of like these measures, they're called GEPRA measures that the federal government requires. So it's based on a number of student attendees. We're required legally to serve 130 at each school. We collect data, in terms of report card grades, student behavioral referrals. We look for essentially academic and behavioral pieces. And then, of course, there's the family feedback. We even have like a parent stakeholder focus group as well once a year.
So it sounds very thorough.
It's very thorough,
collaborative.
yes.
That's great. I loved, I mean, not to make Candy feel bad, but I did love the videos because hearing in our kids' words and the students' words and seeing the excitement and joy on their faces makes it extra special. So I did enjoy that part of both of the Club Hub stuff and Grow Your Own. I'm really excited about the Grow Your Own stuff for the connections, for the opportunity for mentorship, not only from teacher to student, but from our older students to our younger students, that they have the opportunity. So thank you for giving them that opportunity to get in those classrooms and experience that part of education. For the Peace of Mind grant, I really appreciate that the acknowledgement that each school community is different and that you've given them some autonomy to kind of select what is best meeting their needs, and that they can choose to work collaboratively, you know, with other schools or build on those things together. And finally, for the Esser grants, I really love the book bags. I feel like there's a sneaky symbol of learning is a gift. And so we're going to give you this gift for the summer. Because we all know kids love to have surprises and gifts like that, and making that learning piece fun, I think just encourages it more. So thank you for that.
Ms. Deming.
First, just want to say thank you so much. I love the Club Hub. That is just fantastic. And the opportunity to bring opportunities to students and families who don't have necessarily the means for access to get some of those outside type of opportunities is just great. And to see the smile. And thank you for including the parental feedback and hearing their voices as well as our students, because that means so much. How do we determine, are there any limitations on access for being participating in Club Hub?
We do not have any, there's absolutely no requirements to join. There's no barriers for participation. We provide bus transportation free of charge. We provide snacks free of charge. We provide take-home resources and materials free of charge to families. Any student that would like to participate is welcome to join. We have not had to turn any student away. We are contractually required to keep a wait list. Our wait list currently is small, and it generally is consisting of students who want to do more clubs, because we're asking that they commit to a minimum of 2 clubs every week for a semester. And if they wanted to do 3, they can. So we have at least 50% of the students that come to all days that are offered. And then I have in my Monday evening family Zooms over 60 families that do that every Monday out of our 260. So.
The family Zooms are amazing because you see just siblings and you see and they get so excited and they're all sharing with, whether it's Legos or something else. I mean, they're just so excited. And there's a whole family just looking forward to it.
That came through.
And they put me to shame. I couldn't compete with them at all.
That came through so much, so thank you. Can you share a little bit, I think it's Title I, you've kind of talked with us a little bit. Can you share what's happening with our finances, why we're seeing that?
Yeah, we definitely haven't experienced like lower percentages or lower numbers in low-income students. Our numbers have only actually slightly increased, but your title funds are tied to the poverty level, which is tied to the census. So when we presented before showed that, like, at the time of the census, it was at a certain place. So we were getting quite a bit of money right when that census kicked in, which I think was around 2013 or 14. Usually takes about 3 to 4 years from the 2010 census for that to occur. And so that was very high, close to $2 million. But then they do kind of an estimate of what your poverty level would be throughout those next 10 years. And so ours just had estimates of that going down. And so it doesn't get recalculated until there's new census data. I think they say they calculate it on a regular basis, but they're still using the same census data. So it's not really, it's not benefiting us. And I think at the time, that's what we also shared of why our Esser funding, while that's a lot of money, just comparatively to other institutions, it wasn't the same. And that was also based off of census data. And that was the first, that was one of the years we took quite a big hit in title funding. This is a huge hit percentage-wise, going down close to 150,000. So it is, it's frustrating. So.
And I guess, one of the things that's so important is you talk about the grants that we're so competitively going after. It's so critical for us to be able to bring in additional revenue to be able to support, especially those schools where we're seeing that loss. So it's critical that we thank you for being so assertive in looking for other opportunities for us to bring in additional funding. And as we go through over the next couple of years, if there are any types of things that you think are important to bring before us, for us to be aware of or to ever give approval, please don't hesitate to bring this. The last thing I just wanted to, the bags are just fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I can just envision, the elementary students' faces as they get ready. They're kind of trying to struggle with that bag, and they're just laughing and smiling. Mom, Dad, look at this, and an opportunity for families to kind of gather around that during the summer. Thank you so much. It's great.
Mr. Rising.
So just let me clarify again. You said all early childhood through 5th grade kids are getting those bags? So that's like 11,000 kids. That's awesome. That's truly great. And I just wanted to, I don't have any questions. I just keep up the awesome work. Dr. Bell, thank you for all your enthusiasm and dedication to this. It means so much to the board and to our district. We are not a rich district. We are underfunded. So all the work that you can do to apply for these grants and spread the dollars out. And I encourage anybody that's watching tonight and wants to see some of the things Doug was talking about as far as where we put some these Esser funds. That presentation was on December 6th. And I will remind the community that while that dollar amount looked big, like Doug had mentioned, it only equates to about $500 per student that we received as a district. And the fact on, slide 13, 14, 15, 16, all the things we did in this presentation with $500 per student is quite amazing.
It's actually about $500 per student over 4 years, so it's about
Right.
$125 per year.
Yeah, that's for CARES, Esser 1, Esser 2, Esser 3, yeah. Just a real simple question, because I just want to understand better, and this is more maybe for you, Candy, is that Edward grant that we applied for, did it specify that it has to be put in areas, or is that how we wrote it? The mental health clinics have to be in areas where they have a lower income or Title I schools, or how did that?
Yeah, I'll respond.
I just wanted
actually.
clarification on that.
Yeah, no, I understand. So, Edward Amherst this is part of their community grants that they're doing, and one of the goals is to ensure that opportunities are being given into the community to bring the services into the community where there may be difficulty in the community going to the service.
Okay.
And so this is why we selected the schools that we did.
Because those families
May
not have the resources.
May
for
not,
those.
may not.
Right. A lot of people in our community are suffering with mental health, but those areas have a propensity maybe for less resources.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you so much.
If I may add
Yeah.
on to that for just a moment, we also had consultation with a 21st century district, Mannheim, and they had some recent success in incorporating mental health services, group counseling, and individual counseling into the 21st century program with a community partner. They were hoping initially at the beginning of their semester to offer services to perhaps a dozen or so children, and they ended up serving 86 as of the last time I spoke with that project director at our project directors meeting. So there's, it can work out really well for students.
Thanks.
Ms. Jane?
I think grant writing is a labor of love that most people cannot appreciate unless you've tried to write one, and where you are really thinking through each word that you put on that paper. So I feel like we should all give you a standing ovation for what you've tried to do, because it truly is a labor of love. And I think it's also important for our community to understand that these programs that we are providing are supported by these grants and the work that goes behind it. So thank you for that, for your will and dedication to this. I wanted to kind of expand on Ms. Fostick's question about not necessarily assessment, but when you're looking at the strategies regarding the 21st Century Grant, did you notice anything change through your observations or experiences this past year that may have changed your vision or your direction of the strategies you might take in the next year or subsequent years that you may want to share?
Sure. So we actually began as a grantee last year during remote instruction. So all of our programming was offered virtually. So when we began to start thinking about what an after-school program in person would look like, of course we've made some changes over the course of this year. One of them is essentially the amount of weeks that we were deciding to offer. So initially we were offering 24 weeks, a mix again of some online, that increased to 28 when we discovered that students wanted more contact time. And moving forward now, we're committed to 30 weeks during the academic school year. And previously, last year was our first summer, we offered 3 weeks of programming. Again, students wanted more, families wanted more, so moving forward now we've committed to 5 weeks of summer programming for our students. So increasing essentially access to program resources and staff was a need that we heard and we responded.
Wonderful. With regard to the Peace of Mind grant, did I read correctly that some of the funds will be used for staff wellness? Is that one of the programs?
Yes, so we did try to divide up funds for each. We kept saying they were kind of like buckets so that people could kind of make sure that we were hitting on every area. So we have a bucket where it would be just specifically for students, so that funding is a little bit more because there's more students, and that's where we want a majority of our resources to go to. And then one for parent education, family engagement, and then we have a bucket for our staff, which could go to mental health activities, but we also have Title II funds that we can use for that. So we've shared, although it's a much smaller bucket, we did say that we can complement some of the things that they want to do within their building for staff with our Title II funds as well.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that because our staff, our faculty, our teachers, they need the support just as much as our students do. So thank you for doing all that you're doing. I have no other questions.
Ms. Grover.
So I don't really have any questions. I just have a couple of comments, kind of like what everybody else echoed. As a Title II district, we don't have much money. So we really rely on this. So thank you for being proactive. I mean, you're thinking of not only student achievement and learning, but well-being. And we saw what Benefit 360 has, having it in-house. So having these mental health clinics will be great. Think about the community, the parents. The other thing I want to applaud is the district for being so active in the census that just occurred a couple of years ago. Because it is so important to get those numbers right, and because it does affect our funding. So I'm really glad we were so active in the role that we played in trying to get the numbers of how many people we have in our district. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Krubis.
I tried really hard to think of a question for Brian, because I haven't heard from him, but I got nothing.
That's okay.
Oftentimes the board members don't get to see the direct impact in the classroom and the students and the families, so I really appreciate the videos. Not all of the board members are substitute teachers, so we don't get into the classroom. And I look forward to Mr. Shipley incorporating some videos into the budget presentation. That's all I got.
So, echoing what others have said, thank you so much for this important work. It's a lot to write up those grants. 80 pages is crazy, ridiculous. I've written grants before, and I think I'd have to give up before I'd write something that long. But yeah, not only writing them, but tracking the results, because I know that they hold everyone accountable when they give out that money. So thank you so much. Our district could not do a lot of these programs without your very hard work to bring this into our district. And it really is, important to understand. I mean, I'm going to repeat what you said. We've seen a slight growth in the number of our Title I students, our low-income students, yet we are seeing a major decline in our federal funding for Title I schools. So it's like, not the formula that we would like to see, and your work helps us continue to be able to offer some very exciting programs. I sat back here and I'm like, oh, I want to be helped by this, because first everyone knows I'm a Lego junkie, so it's like that first video was, I will sign up for the club, but dog therapy, yoga, all of the things were like kind of hot buttons for me, and this Grow Your Own Teachers initiative is fantastic. I see the excitement, and I do see the Twitter posts and things, and I try and always like them because everyone looks so happy and excited, and they're learning something about their future careers, but also potentially going to be a great asset for our district in the future. So thank you all for everything that you're doing. I had one question. One of the things that we're working hard to do is make sure that we're addressing the achievement gap with some of our populations of students. So do we try and target those families and students that have students that are struggling for these programs?
Yeah, I think there's several things. First, some of these are really approaching an opportunity gap at the same time, and making sure that we're providing those opportunities. You're also noticing that several of these grants are about supplanting, really trying to support the programs you have in place. So That is specifically one of the targets of that Freedom Schools grant. Is our needs assessment was identifying what we noticed in those gaps and how we think that these programs could support it. They had to be after school or summer programs, additional programming, and it's really specific to focusing on the gaps. So we're excited about that opportunity. Those principals are excited about that opportunity. We're keeping our fingers crossed because it's just for programming that we wouldn't be able to come up with the money ourselves with how stretched we are with our current funds.
So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next topic is an update from Matt Shipley on the budget forecast.
Matt, do we need to lower the lights for the video?
Not tonight, but the challenge is accepted, so we will, I do think we have some good graphs, though, so we'll see. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for letting me reschedule, too, because 2 Mondays ago would have been a little tough, but good evening, members of the Board of Education. Tonight, we are presenting a budget and forecast update. This will continue our discussion from the February 28th Board of Education meeting. Tonight's presentation will include data from the current fiscal year 2022, as well as the next 3 fiscal years. It's fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. This presentation is in line with District Goal Number 3 and Board Policy 4.10. Tonight, I do want to start briefly just with kind of an economic climate update and what that impact or potential impact looks like on the district finances. There's obviously been a lot of change over the past several months as far as general economic data and information that's come out. We'll then move into our operating revenues, again focusing on the next 3 fiscal years 2023 through 2025. We'll cover operating expenses for that same 3-year fiscal year period, close with a non-operating funds update, and then finally we will summarize the presentation and offer our next steps and give an opportunity for the Board of Education for any questions. So as mentioned, just want to start with an overall discussion of the economic climate and maybe what's changed or been updated since our discussion in late February. So in late February, we really kind of the word of the day or the word of that presentation was inflation. We talked a lot about the consumer price index that had come out for fiscal year 2021 being at 7%. Those trends have continued, so we have 3 more months of inflationary data from the Federal Reserve. Annual inflation rate was 8.5% as of March 2022, and then we received another update late last week, so it's now 8.3% as of April 2022. That 8.3% exceeded expectations of the market and forecasts as well. So this is really our main challenge going into the 22-23 budget year, is dealing with an inflationary environment and what that impact is to the district. With that said, we've also started to see some leading indicators that are suggesting slower economic growth, potentially in the 18-month, 2-year, 3-year horizon, with some people even calling for a recession within as soon as 18 months from now. This is really a result of seeing these rising interest rates and the action that the Federal Reserve has started to take to combat inflation, and that's led to a lot of market volatility within the stock market, within the bond market. We've seen a decline. I believe that the stock market closed April with one of its worst 4-month periods in many years. And really, we're in a situation where, depending on who you listen to or depending on what day it is, people are either forecasting inflation trends to continue for several years, or they're projecting this or predicting this inflation followed quickly by a recession. So we're really kind of in a little bit of a transition period, or where there's a lot of uncertainty, and we will continue to follow that and update the board as necessary and update our future budgets and forecasts accordingly. But again, when we specifically look for the 22-23 budget year, It's really the inflationary trends and inflationary challenges that we're addressing. But I did want to kind of update the board or provide sort of what some of the different challenges are of an inflationary environment compared to a recessionary environment. Looking at an inflationary environment, these are really things we talked about at length in February and probably have been talking about for most of the last year, if not longer, because these really are challenges we've seen on a day-to-day basis with the environment we're in. But just to kind of go over them again, the first is dealing with property taxes, where our property taxes are limited by the inflationary amount, and then also have a 5% cap on them, known as the PTEL tax cap. So we are limited in the amount of property tax revenue we can generate each year by that inflationary number, and that inflationary number has a cap which we've now exceeded for the 2021 levy year. Costs also generally rise prior to revenues. You see this a lot with businesses that businesses are reluctant to pass cost increases on to the consumer. So you see an increase in what's known as the producer price index before it gets passed on to the consumer, making the purchase at the supermarket or gas station. For us, the main generators is that lag that we covered a lot at the last meeting and the CPI that's used for property taxes. So even though the current inflationary rates are running above that 5%, our current tax levy that we are receiving the first week of June, so in a couple weeks, is only increasing by 1.4%. So that, again, that's a similar trend that's seen kind of in the private sector, but it's a little bit of a different cause for us. On the expenditure side, when you talk about some of the inflationary challenges, again, I don't think there's been a board meeting where it hasn't been brought up, our ability to hire and retain staff in this sort of environment. So we've continued to see that. And we've also, I think, talked specifically during some of our capital discussions about unpredictability in construction costs, supply chain challenges, and other challenges as we budget for some of those larger projects in a rising cost environment. So just kind of again, with that as kind of the frame or the mindset of what we've dealt with over the past year and look to be dealing with for next budget year, just want to transition to some of the recessionary challenges that we see that again could be facing the district within the next couple of years. And again, these are general. Every recession, every inflationary cycle is a little different, but during a recession, we tend to see declining property values. So even though as a district we may be able to increase our levy each year, that puts a higher rate burden on our taxpayers if their property is not increasing at that same rate. The second challenge along with property taxes is the amount of new property we receive. So during a recessionary environment, we tend to see less new property come online each year. Over the past several years, we've seen about 40 to 50 million of new property each year. During the most recent recession, the 2010-2011 time period, that number was closer to 15 to 20 million. So more than a 50% reduction in new property coming online. We do see pressure on our ability to charge fees or see some other local revenues, whether that's building rentals, the student fees that we charge. We can see an increase in our free and reduced lunch population, which needs to be supported and supported on the expense side, but then also we're not collecting as much student lunch or student fee revenue from those families as well. And then finally, the piece that we tend to talk about the most in a recessionary environment tends to be the challenges that creates at a state funding level. The state is very dependent on income taxes and sales taxes, which do move more directly with the economy than our property taxes do. And so we do see some budget challenges really pop up at the state level pretty quickly during a recession. On the expenditure side, then we have a couple challenges as well, and I'll just again point these out in general. But the first one we've seen in the past is an increase in health insurance costs and plan usage. So this is something we would monitor very closely. We, as a district, have made it a priority to offer health insurance to all our employees, both our teaching staff as well as our non-bargaining and classified staff. During a recession, what we see is a higher amount of dependents come on our health insurance plan, as maybe people's spouses are unemployed, and so they had their own health insurance, their spouse's plan, they now come onto our plan. Or their dependents are having trouble finding insurance, so they stay on our plan a little longer. So again, we've seen an increase of about, during the last recession, we saw about an 8% increase in covered lives on our insurance plan. So again, while we think it's important to provide that health insurance to our employees and their families, we also want to encourage them to explore other opportunities to insure themselves or receive that health care as well. And some of those other opportunities start kind of drying up during a recession. The final thing is just our operating environment. We operate on a school year system, and once we kind of start a year, it becomes difficult to pivot, if you will, during a recession. And so sometimes we do see declines in revenue before we're able to fully adjust our staffing models or our programming to that revenue decline. So similar to on the inflationary side, we can see costs rise quicker than revenues. On the recessionary side, we can see revenues decline faster than expenditures. So with that as a background, I just want to, we'll start moving into the revenue trends that we're seeing. And again, this will primarily be an update of data we shared at the February 28th board meeting. So again, we're still seeing a budget revenue allocation similar to the February 28th meeting, and this has been the same for many years. Property taxes represent over 3/4 of the district revenue. State revenue is 14%, with evidence-based funding making the highest percent of that of 11%. We receive about 6% of our revenue from federal sources, and then 3% from other local revenue. You'll see the second chart, we are projecting gradual increases as revenue from the current year of just short of $379 million of operating revenue, up to $397 in fiscal year 23, $415.5 million in fiscal year 24, and then finally $426 million in fiscal year 25. Again, property tax revenues represent the highest percentage of that at 77%. Just want to show that from our update on February 28th to today, the 2021 levy is now final, so we still had some estimates in that data we presented in late February. But you'll see we came in, and I just went forward accidentally. Okay, but you'll see that the data stayed almost right on where we presented in February. So we were estimating new property of $55 million. It actually came in at $55.5 million. The consumer price index, we've known that for a long time. That was 1.4%. The one change is we did see the tax rate, so the rate that's charged to our taxpayers was slightly higher than what we had projected. So we had projected a rate of 5.27. The rate that is on the current tax bills that are due June 1st is 5.36. And I'll just point out that is based on a property value as of January 1st, 2021. So I would expect this to kind of be a one-year blip with a slight increase, and once some of the significant increases we've seen in the residential market kind of catches up with those values next year, I think we'll continue to see that decreasing rate trend that we looked at in February. Again, this levy, the first payment is due June 1st. That will support the current budget year we're in right now. The second payment that's due on September 1st, 2022 will support the 22-23 school year. The 2022 levy update, this levy, we've made no changes in the assumptions. I think there's just a small rounding update to the tax rate. Again, that's a tax rate that would be lower than the current year tax rate. Again, this uses the 2021 CPI that is a known amount and is capped at 5%. Did make a change to the 2023 levy just to represent that consumer price index number, which will be the 2022 consumer price index, continues to increase. So the February forecast assumed a 3% increase for fiscal year 2022. The current numbers that we're looking at and are presenting tonight assume 4% increase. If we were to project out the CPI that's through April, so again, the numbers that were released last week, that already represents about a 2.9% increase. So even if every price as of today stayed flat, we would have a 2.9% increase for the 2022 CPI. So again, hitting that full 5% is definitely still in play. I think it would take some significant action to keep it at around that 3%, so we've increased it to 4%, kind of splitting the difference between those two numbers. The state revenue, in total, the fiscal year 2023 budget was signed by Governor Pritzker at the end of the spring session, and it was consistent with almost, I believe, no changes from a funding standpoint to what we presented in February. So these numbers that are in tonight's forecast are identical to the discussion we had in February. Again, that included an evidence-based funding increase of $300 million and an increase to the categorical payments of about 10%. Those are substantially all of our state revenue are in those two buckets. There was some tax relief, suspending the gas tax and some other tax relief for individual taxpayers. That did not impact us directly. So that did not impact the education funding component of the budget. So did want to just update one piece that kind of made headlines about a month ago. So you may have seen this headline. Again, this was, I think, taken from the Tribune, where it says Illinois school districts will wait $87 million owed after state overpaid Chicago Public Schools. So we received notice really about the same time that this information became public that there was an error made over several years with data used in the evidence-based funding formula. Again, we didn't receive a lot of information. I think that it kind of appeared in that governor's budget bill, and nobody really knew what it was, and details kind of slowly kind of leaked out over the next week or two. But what the state is saying occurred is that a data point that's used in that evidence-based funding formula was incorrect, starting with the first year of evidence-based funding. We're now in year 5, and that error carried forward for 5 years and impacted every year of funding subsequent. So as a result, Chicago Public Schools was overpaid $87 million of state funding cumulatively over that 5 years. The state informed us that they would be looking to redo that funding calculation and redistribute that money according to how it should have been distributed initially. So sort of received $87 million, start doing some back of the envelope numbers, and I think, okay, this could be a couple $100,000 for our district. We received notice about a week or two later that the actual number was $5,389, or 0.006% of the total amount of that $87 million. After kind of taking a deep breath and thinking about it a little bit more, you know, a little less surprised than a little less surprised after thinking about it, and really this talks to a lot of the challenges we've seen with evidence-based funding, and we again talked about a lot in February and prior meetings. But the overwhelming majority of this money went to Tier 1 districts. Some of the larger Tier 1 districts, Elgin 46, Plainfield 202, received, I think, about $3 million each. West Aurora and East Aurora, I believe, received over $1 million as a result of this. So, again, it speaks to the challenge we have as a Tier 1 district. We have, a Tier 2 district. We have documented a need. We have documented that we do not receive adequate funding, but you know, when there is additional funding available, it's going to those Tier 1 districts and not making its way to Tier 2 districts. I just wanted to before I move on to federal, I'll just comment that it also came at an interesting time in sort of the cycle of evidence-based funding, because after 5 years, evidence-based funding by statute is subject to a professional review panel that's supposed to review it and provide comments and recommendations to the legislature. So myself and several other DuPage business leaders are working on participating in that process. We'll be meeting over the summer, and this will definitely be a hot topic of conversation as far as how could an error like this happen? How could it make it 3 or 4 or 5 years without people noticing? And then again, getting back to the challenges that we're seeing as a Tier 2 district with, you know, this money really not trickling down, I think, as some of us thought it would when the bill was passed back in 2018. So just wanted to move on to a federal revenue update, and I know Deputy Superintendent Darius touched on a lot with federal revenue in his presentation. So I just wanted to cover where we are with one specific grant, and that's the National School Lunch Program. Again, a topic you may have seen headlines on over the past several months. The federal government has not extended the free lunch waiver that was in place for the last 2 school years. So you can see some of these headlines are calling that a crisis. There's a lot of finger pointing between Republicans and Democrats in Washington over what's the cause of this. And there's also been discussion that maybe, even though it's not been approved yet, it'll appear at a later date or in a later bill and be approved for next school year. So we're following this closely, but as of now, we would not have the free meal waiver that we've had in place for the last 2 school years. As a result, we are preparing, assuming that waiver is no longer in place, which would mean we would go back to charging students for meals unless they qualify for free and reduced lunch services. We are looking in either situation a return to pre-pandemic operations in our school lunches, school lunchrooms. So we are looking for expanded offerings, bringing back all the a la carte items and salad bars and different things that have been missing over the past couple years. So we will have sort of normal pre-COVID operations in our lunchrooms regardless of what happens with that lunch waiver. If we do not receive the waiver, though, we will be charging students for that service. And we do recognize that a lot of our families have come to rely on that free lunch. We've seen a significant increase in participation in the lunch program, which has been great. So we're hopeful that maybe something changes, but we do have to prepare as if it will not be in place next year. We'll continue to update the board and the community on that as we go through the summer. Just moving on to expenditures then. We didn't talk a lot about expenditures at the last meeting, but I think we did look at the expenditure allocation we're projecting for next year. And again, this is almost identical to current year budgets. The biggest cost for the district is our salaries and benefits, representing 63% and 13% of expenditures respectively. Purchase services, which includes our outsourced transportation, food service, and building maintenance staff, is 14%. And then we get into the smaller amounts for supplies, capital outlay, non-capitalized equipment, and other. Again, similar to expenses, we are projecting moderate increases in expenditures over each of the next 3 years. One of the reasons we didn't cover a lot over expenditures in February is because there was still a lot of uncertainty, and we've done a lot of work over the last couple months to put contracts in place for the next school year. So as you know, the board approved the teacher's contract on April 18th. That is a 4-year contract that covers the next school year through the 25-26 school year. We presented tonight and was approved the classified staff contract, again another 4-year contract from 22-23 to 25-26. And then finally, we had approved at the April 4th Board of Education meeting a transportation contract, which did increase our transportation costs by 12.5%. So all that wasn't yet known in late February, and so while in general these contracts came in about where we were expecting, that's really why we focused primarily on revenues back in February. As it says, these contracts in total represent about 76% of district expenditures. Tonight's budget and the budget that we will be using going forward has been updated to reflect all these new agreements. So just talking about expenditures and what some of our philosophy is as we look to prioritize where we spend our funds. I just wanted to start by talking about enrollment. As you can see, this chart, the bar chart of this shows enrollment over the past 10 years, so from 2012 to 2022. And what you'll see is that our enrollment has decreased, and it decreases approximately 200 to 300 students a year for the past 10 years. So we've seen about a 10 to 11% decrease total in students at the district. Our priority has always been to maintain staffing levels and use that to support our students either through lower class sizes or additional services, even though we've seen declining enrollment. That 2012 is really a baseline where the district's enrollment was at one of its highest levels, and our expenditure challenges were also at the highest because that was during really at the height of the last Great Recession. So really it's been a priority of administration ever since then to hold staffing levels constant as enrollment declines in order to bring back some of the services, some of the lower class sizes we had seen prior to 2012. One of the challenges that I'll point out, and there's 3 lines on this this graph that are percentage based, and that's our low income special ed and ELL populations. So even as our total enrollment has decreased, those populations have in general increased. And again, we touched a little bit on this with the grant presentation previously, but our low income percentage in 2012 was about 14%. That's now up into the 17-18% range. Special education has stayed relatively flat, and then ELL has increased from 7% to 11%. So again, even though we're seeing declining enrollment, we're seeing some of those higher needs, those diverse learning populations actually stay stable or increase. And so this next graph really shows how that priority looks in practice. And so the blue line shows that enrollment decrease from a baseline of 2012. And again, it shows that enrollment decreasing by about 10 to 11% over the past 10 years. The gray bar shows, however, that our total FTE has actually increased by 2% over those 10 years, and our teaching FTE has stayed virtually unchanged. It's just down about 0.5% over 10 years. So as in prior years, that's been our goal for the 22-23 budget year, and I'm happy to say we will be able to continue this trend of keeping staffing level despite a projected decrease of enrollment next year. So with that said, where we're looking to support students and put some of that FTE is really in the areas of supporting our special needs populations and social emotional health. So instead of trying to use that to decrease class sizes across the board or provide small decreases maybe in some class sizes, we're trying to redeploy some of those positions. So we're working at hiring currently 7 additional special education students that'll focus on our buildings with self-contained classrooms. We've seen those buildings and those classrooms have be some of the most challenged with some of the challenging behaviors and issues we've seen come out of COVID. We're also looking at adding 2 FTE for SEL supports at our middle school levels as well. And again, this is all actually in the budget as of today. This is not reliant on any of the grants that are pending that Deputy Superintendent Carey has covered earlier. Hopefully we're able to receive 1 or 2 of those grants and then further provide those supports as well. Second priority, again, last month we saw a presentation on the STEM programming initiative. We are providing budget funds to fully support that STEM programming initiative. We presented in April, myself and our Transportation Director, Ron Johnson, on our boundary change and our grandfathering transportation process. That was a priority to make sure that we could support that, and as we presented last month, we were able to provide that at no increased cost of transportation for the district. And then the final priority is going to be to support the implementation of the district's strategic plan as we work through the summer on finalizing that document. So with that said, this slide here kind of puts together both the revenues and expenditures, and again reflects all the assumptions and items we just covered. So I will say that we do anticipate to present the board with a balanced budget for next school year in fiscal 23, and we are forecasting, if we keep these assumptions forward, a balanced budget in fiscal year 2024 as well. With that said, I recognize we do have a slight deficit of about $2.4 million. We're currently presenting for the forecast year of fiscal year 2025. I'll just cover a few items we're already starting to work on to try and close that gap. The first, again, came up in the grant presentation, but we are hoping that by that time we will have the updated census data that will drive some significant increases in federal funding for our district. We're also optimistic that we could see some changes in the federal Medicaid law that would see a higher reimbursement amount come to the district as well for, again, services we're already providing that Medicaid should be covering, that really at a state level, the ball's kind of in the state's court to make sure we receive that funding. So we're following that issue as well. Secondly, and I'm working with our Assistant Superintendent over Technology, Rodney Mack, on different ideas for some technology efficiencies, things that shouldn't change the overall services that we provide to our students, but just changes in maybe how we fund some of those purchases or provide some of those support services as well. The final thing, again, just wanted to make one more mention of the presentation that came before us. Again, videos and all. We continue to be aggressive in pursuing competitive grants and other funding sources opportunities. I'll put that with the caveat that a lot of times, or really all the time, competitive grants don't necessarily go into kind of the general fund. They're for specific purposes. Usually people don't give you grants to do something you're already doing. They want to see innovation. They want to see new ideas, new proposals, new projects. But they do give us an opportunity to maybe, again, for lack of a better way of saying it, address things that we can't address with our local revenue and state revenue. And so competitive grants may not necessarily be the best way to close a budget deficit, but it is a way to increase or expand programming that maybe can't be supported in some of those years. Okay. So real quickly, just want to go through the bond and interest fund forecast again, and actually do have 5 years here because this is the same slide we showed in February. I'll just point out or reiterate, all our payments are known. Both the interest and principal amounts are pre-scheduled. So again, we're in a rising interest rate environment where home mortgage costs are increasing or other interest rates are increasing. That does not impact us. All our rates are fixed and will not change for the duration of the bonds. And again, over the 5 years, part of the incentive of showing this over 5 years is that we do get to a period on December 30th of 2026, so in fiscal year 2027, where we will have paid off all outstanding general obligation bonds of the district. And then just to touch on our capital projects fund forecast, again, showing 5 years because this really speaks to that $50 million capital initiative I presented with our Director of Building Operations in December. We continue to be on track to increase the level of capital investment over the next several years and meet that $50 million target. One change we have made since February 28th is we do think we're going to have a little bit of an operating surplus this year that we will use to fund current capital projects and allow really capital money to roll forward into future years and be available for 2023 and 2024 or later. So we're showing that we're going to spend just $5 million of capital. We're out of the capital projects fund. We had originally budgeted $9 million. That remaining $4 million of spend will come out of operating, and that'll free up $4 million in some of those out years of this forecast. And I'm going. All right. So with that said, we will continue to update the Board of Education as necessary. But again, our property tax revenue is known, and our state revenue is based on a past budget by the governor. So I really don't think there's a lot that's going to change with next year's budget. So I would recommend that we will do a tentative budget presentation at the July 18th Board of Education meeting with the hope for a final budget adoption that includes a public hearing at the August 23rd Board of Education meeting. If anything changes before then, I will update the board accordingly, and we can revise that schedule. We have until September 30th to present a final budget to the public and have that approved at a Board of Education meeting. But I do think we're in good shape to move forward with a July and August timeframe. So with that, I am open to any questions.
Okay.
And again, I apologize for no videos.
Mr. Rising.
I have no questions.
Okay. Ms. Jane.
I'm going to follow Board Member Rising. I have no questions. Thank you, Matt.
That's still throwing me for a loop that Board Member Rising has no questions. But
Well, this is my favorite part is the budget. There's many things I could say, but between your presentation in February and this one, I mean, I think you laid it out perfectly, and we've got some challenges ahead, but we're staying balanced. So.
Two quick questions. On slide 12, as we get ready to potentially shift on the national lunch scheme, what will that mean in revenue for us?
Yeah, good question. So I do have on the slide that we've traditionally offered the National School Lunch Program as a break-even program. So we charge what's needed to kind of sustain the program. In talking with our support operations director, we do have some surplus funds as a result of the COVID programming that we'll be using to kind of offset. And we don't think we're going to need to raise the price of meals for next year. So it'll still be the same price it was for the 2019-2020 school year. So even though we can't offer the free meals, we're hoping that's at least some relief for our families and helps with that adjustment. But again, the requirement as the National School Lunch Program is to offer that as a break-even program, so that revenue is supposed to offset, and we've just built up a little bit of surplus that we're going to use in the short term to.
Did we see? Oops, sorry.
No, that was me. Sorry.
Did we see families take advantage of school lunches?
We have seen a significant increase in lunches served in really all levels. I would say it's not quite double, but it's in that range. It is a significant increase, and we can get some more accurate numbers to you. But we again and not just this year when we were in school, but if you remember, we were offering lunch during the summers and during some of our remote learning periods as well for grab and go and pick up at all our school locations. So this really has been, I think, a resource that many of our families have used, and so it is. Again, it's unfortunate that it's coming to end at a time where, again, we still have families seeing challenges, and this would be a potential benefit.
And then last real quick question: categorical payments, are they on target now? I just can't remember if they're exactly on target or just a little bit late.
Yes, they are currently still on schedule. So that's something that, again, we don't give the state credit a lot, but I will give them credit that over the last couple of years they have caught up and those payments are back on schedule for really the first time that I can remember.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Karubas.
Kind of the global perspective, I'm impressed. I want to focus on the fact that I know there's different time frames, but we were in a 8.5% inflationary environment. We were able to lock in our new contracts, 76% of our budget, and project out annual increases in our revenue of 4.67, 4.88, and 3.21. People tend to focus on one aspect of a contract or a budget, but in that inflationary environment, to have our expenditures increase at a significant lower rate than that inflationary environment and over a term of years is a great place to be from a district finance standpoint. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment on those contracts. Again, we work very collaboratively with both unions on that, so I do want to thank our counterparts with the union leadership. They understand the challenges that we historically as a district face and that we are facing in this environment, and so it does take time and effort to really construct a contract that works for both parties and reflects those challenges. And so specific with the teacher's contract, one of the things we did is the third and fourth year are tied specifically to CPI. So that will work very closely and mirror what some of that unknown CPI is in the outer years. Both unions have been supportive in some of the insurance changes we've made. Working with insurance providers to make sure that we're receiving the best insurance coverage at the fairest price. So those are really two things that I think speak to the collaborative relationship we have and have really helped drive, again, being able to offer contracts that are fair and provide fair terms for both sides.
Ms. Grover?
I just found it interesting that even with $87 million, CPS was still tier 1. That's all. I was just, you know, I wonder what it takes for them to come to tier 2 so that we can evenly distribute the funding.
Yeah,
Don't forget the $2.8 billion they got in ESSER funding.
Yeah, it speaks to some of the challenges we're seeing now 5 years into EBF is that some of these tier 1 districts have kind of maybe not moved as much as we thought, where the accountability of how they're spending the funds maybe hasn't been documented or followed up as I think the legislation expected. And so as a tier 2 district, we're kind of told to wait our turn, and we're 5 years in and we're still waiting.
Ms. Fosdick.
I just have one question. In the earlier presentation, and you brought up again the census, they mentioned that there was typically a 3 to 4 year gap before that funding catches up from new census data. So if that's the case, if that was the 2020 census, would you hope or expect for us to, fingers crossed, have any increased funds in advance of when we actually have like the practical use of the fiscal year 2025 budget?
Yeah, it's still an unknown. I think fiscal year 2025 is the earliest I would expect.
Oh, wow.
In addition to the general kind of 2 to 3 year lag that we've historically seen, there's again been some news come out of Washington that they're delaying that further. Just again, challenges with staffing, challenges compiling the data. So I've seen that release date's kind of been kind of pushed back a couple times already. So I do think 2025 is the earliest, unfortunately. But the other piece that I did mention was the Medicaid. That would potentially come online sooner. Okay. And that's hopefully expanding Medicaid eligible. We receive Medicaid revenue when we provide Medicaid eligible services to students with IEPs and 504 plans. There is an opportunity to receive those funds for all students, and again the state's kind of working through. I believe it's in the state's hand, and Dr. Talley may have even more information or more recent update than I do. But again, it's something we're following that could bring in more federal revenue within a shorter time frame.
Okay. I just want to close by saying I appreciate the continued effort to keep staffing levels consistent, because in the last 10 years we see, the enrollment's gone down, but you've kept that consistent, or the district has really worked to keep that the case. What we do know is that stress and pressure has gone up, way up in the last 10 years. So having, the staff level remain the same benefits both the teachers and the kids and the support staff.
Yeah, again, it's been it's been a priority now for administration to keep doing that, and we work hard each budget year to try and make it possible. I will say one of the challenges with that approach is when you add staff, you get to really pinpoint what you want to add and where you want to add it, and when you're kind of doing this redeployment or juggling of staff levels, sometimes you just end up with some round pegs and square holes where maybe the staff we have isn't exactly what we want for the services, and that can kind of lead again to some delays where we're saying, okay, we're looking at adding 2 mental health providers where we'd love to be in a position to add 10, 12, whatever, but again we're kind of we're just limited.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the report. It is one of the things I wanted to clarify, like the contract we talked about, that it was part of it's tied to CPI, the contracts that we did, but it is capped though at a certain rate. Like if CPI goes to hopefully never 10% or something, we're not tied to that.
Correct. It is where we've used CPI language in the most recent teacher's contract. It mirrors the CPI we use for the property tax, so it is reflective of that 5% cap.
Yeah, and concern of having CPI forecast at 8.5%. We are only levying 5% in the district, and so it's important for people to understand that we are limited to that 5% with what we can do here. Do you see any legislative action re-looking at that in case things get way out of control?
I have not seen anything. I think the fact that it's an election year makes it unlikely we will see anything until the next winter session, so January of 2023 at the earliest. I think just given the environment, and given where previous legislation has usually looked at further restricting that increase and putting an even greater cap on it, whether that's a property tax freeze or a pension cost shift. So I see it as probably very unlikely that we'd see legislation that would actually increase our home rule ability or our ability to have more control over that levy.
So, and similar to Ms. Grover's comments, I was very excited when I saw the 87 million in the newspapers, and crushed when I saw that we were getting 5,000, whatever it was. And it's like, wow, that is, it was crushing. So, sorry to hear that, but yeah. So, thank you very much for your report and all your work to keep us balanced and on target here.
Great, thank you.
All right, next up, well, before we go to legislative and school Board of Education update, I just want to encourage everyone to go to the Fine Arts Festival on this weekend on Saturday, and showcasing so much fine work from our students in our district, and really look forward to that. So, does anyone have any legislative advocacy and Board of Education items?
So IASB resolutions and belief statements are due in. So next board meeting is when we will we'll vote on whatever the resolutions and belief statements are. So if anybody needs help, or if anybody wants to submit anything, let me know, please, because we'll vote on them next time we meet. And then we were selected to do a presentation about community engagement for the next IASB conference in November 2022. So that's exciting.
It's very exciting, and congratulations for working on submitting that. So, I have no other items to share.
Oh, I do want to say Memorial Day Parade also. Our schools are marching in that, so Monday morning.
Well, with that, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you.